Hey guys, my name's Wes and this is my 5,000 kilometer review of the Triumph T100 Bonneville. Alright, so why did I end up with the Bonneville? I'd been a Royal Enfield man for a couple of years. I'd had 4 Royal Enfields, a Meteor 350, a Continental GT and 2 Interceptors, and I just kind of wanted a change. And I was scrolling through the internet late one night and I saw this T100 come up. It hadn't been listed long and it was loaded with custom bits and bobs. It was too good of a deal to turn down. It was basically the same price as a brand new Interceptor, but obviously it was a 900cc T100 Bonneville. As well as that, I just received my full license. So in New Zealand, you get your learner's license, your restricted license, and your full. Your restricted means you can only ride up to 650 cc's capacity. So I had my full license for about 6 months, and I thought it was time to get a big boy bike. So I went for this 900cc Triumph. Triumph is just a really cool brand. It's been ridden by a lot of my icons over the years, like Paul McCartney and Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen. I know a lot of people talk about Marlon Brando, but he doesn't really mean anything to me. And I mean, James Bond rides one that's pretty cool. He rides the Scramblers and stuff in the latest movie. Yeah, and the other thing was I just felt a little bit oversaturated with Royal Enfields. At the time, I'd just taken a break from my design career and was actually running the Royal Enfield flagship motorbike store in Auckland in New Zealand. And yeah, I was just dealing with Royal Enfields every single day, day in, day out, and I wanted to naturally distance myself and just have a Triumph. Don't get me wrong, I love Royal Enfields. I may even get another one after this, so who knows. Alright, let's talk about the performance and the specs of this bike. So it's a 900cc parallel twin, liquid cooled, producing 54 brake horsepower. This is the 2018 edition. I know that the later editions, maybe 2019 or 2020 onwards, produce 64 brake horsepower. The sweet spot of this bike is the torque. It produces 80 newton meters of torque. You can basically cruise around town in 3rd gear. You never really need to change into 4th, or you don't actually need to change down too often to go around corners. You just sit there in 3rd gear and do your thing, like whether you want to commute or what. The bike features an 18-inch front wheel and a 17-inch rear wheel, and the seat height is 790 millimeters, which means it's very accessible for most riders. I think with a full tank, the bike weighs around 230 kgs. It can feel a little bit heavy to some people, but I don't have any trouble maneuvering it around. It doesn't feature any rider modes, so that's one of the selling points for me. I'm not a big fan of having to flick through different modes. I like to just turn on the bike, get on it and go, and it has everything I need in one package. In terms of ergonomics, I'm 6'2", maybe 6'3" with my boots on, and to be honest, I think the bike's a little bit small for me. I think the Interceptor is actually slightly better position for my body type. Personally, I'd like to maybe move the pegs a little bit forward and maybe get some bar risers, and then it'll be super comfortable. But even visually, I feel like a little bit big on the bike. Yeah, so the wheelbase could maybe be a bit longer. In terms of usage, I use the bike every single day to go to work. I'm only riding about 10 kilometers down the road, but previously when I lived in Auckland, I was riding about 30 kilometers there and back, so 60 kilometers a day. It's more than capable enough around town. It's actually perfect around town, and you can go long distance as well. So I've taken it on 1,000-kilometer round trips. I plan to do some this summer as well, some longer trips on the T100, and it's got a 5-speed gearbox, which is more than adequate enough for the power that this bike produces. I've never felt the desire to have a 6th gear. 5 gears is perfect, and I kind of love having that just 5 gears. It limits you to less gear changing. I think this bike would be great for long distance tours as well. You could probably travel across America or across Europe or India or anything on the T100. It's more than capable of doing both on-road and a bit of off-road. I've taken this bike on numerous little gravel tracks here and there in the mountains here in New Zealand. I've actually got scrambler tires fitted on this current bike, and it handles really well on gravel. You maybe get the odd little stone flicking up into the front mudguard, which ideally you'd want slightly higher raised mudguard, but apart from that, yeah, the bike's capable of off-road as well. So let's talk about what I absolutely love about the bike after riding it for 5,000 kilometers. It's all about that power and the torque. Like I've said before, it just has so much grunt in those lower gears, especially just commuting around town, which is most of my usage of the bike. It's ideal for me. The other thing I love about the bike is the long service intervals. So the Triumph has 16,000 kilometer intervals, or once every 12 months. But I mean, you'd be a pretty hard push to get 16,000 Ks every year unless you're riding crazy distances. To put it into context, the Royal Enfield Interceptor has 5,000 K intervals, so you're going to find yourself racking that up pretty quickly. The Triumph T100 is incredibly maneuverable and easy to flick through traffic. Like I said before, I use it for commuting every single day, and I often lane split to get to the front of the traffic lights. I find the bike's got really short handlebars, and especially with these little bar end mirrors, I can just weave in and out of the traffic. And just getting around corners, there's lots of 90-degree roads here in Christchurch in New Zealand, and I find the bike just is super nimble getting through traffic and around town. The other thing I love about the Triumph T100 is just the fit and finish of the bike feels incredibly premium. You feel like you've saved a lot of money to get this bike, and when you get it, you feel like you bought something that's premium and hard-earned and rewarding. I love this particular model for the blacked-out engine. Like, it doesn't require much maintenance. Like, for someone that rides every single day, I hardly ever have to clean it, maybe once every couple of weeks, just because I'm a little bit OCD like that. But you could honestly clean it once every couple of months. It just doesn't really get that dirty. The speedos and gauges on this bike is one of the massive selling points for me as well. They're just beautiful. They're like works of art. It's like the Rolex of motorcycles. They feature your petrol meter as well as an indicator showing how much fuel you have left in the bike. It also features a clock, which was, believe it or not, a massive selling point for me, coming from an Interceptor and someone that commutes and needs to know if he's running late for work or not. I find that having a clock is an absolute must on a motorbike. And lastly, let's talk about the reliability of the bike. I think I've never had any issues with the bike, apart from when I first bought it. The previous owner had a tail tidy on there, and there was some wiring issues which was making the engine light come on, which freaked me out. I thought I'd bought a lemon, but it turns out I got it plugged in at a Triumph dealership, and they basically told me that yeah, there was some issues with the back tail light harnessing wires. So I just put on the stock, and I've never had any issues with it since then. Alright, so let's talk about what I don't like about the bike. I mean, nothing's perfect, and even the Triumph T100 has its flaws. The main one for me would be the suspension. Some of the roads here in my city, Christchurch in New Zealand, are quite bumpy. And yeah, I've actually gone on a few long distance rides and had a sore back for like 3 days afterwards. They're pretty shocking shocks. But yeah. If I could upgrade one thing on this bike at the moment, it would be the shocks. The other thing is the petrol consumption. The little meter on the gauges often says you'll have, for instance, 150 kilometers left in the tank, and then you'll park the bike up, come back after your day of work, and it'll say you've got 200 Ks left in the tank. So it can be a little bit unreliable, but I find it tends to set itself on a long distance trip, so it's relatively reliable. My other gripe with the bike is it doesn't come with a center stand. I think these are essential just for especially a chain bike where you need to maintain and do a bit of maintenance on the chain, as well as for storing it in your garage. If you want to save a bit of space, a center stand is kind of essential. And my last negative with the Triumph T100 is just the throttle responsiveness. It can feel a bit snatchy at times. I've been lane splitting before when I was living back up in Auckland, and my glove got caught on the grip, and it basically flicked, and the bike nearly flew off into the car in front of me. So it's happened a few times where you get a little bit of a fright. So You do get used to it, and you learn to sort of nurture it a bit more, but I found the Royal Enfield Interceptor had quite a smoother response, so you turn the throttle and it'll take off a bit more gently, whereas this one, it just wants to go straight away. But it's not that big of it, you get used to it. It's just a very minor negative. So in conclusion, after riding the bike for 5,000 kilometers, I think it's an incredible motorcycle. It's perfect for someone like me that wants to do daily commuting, but also wants to spend the weekends riding out into the mountains with friends and doing long distance trips. You get a lot of looks from people, everyone comments on it. You pull up at traffic lights and people say, nice bike, like it's a beautiful machine. And you just feel like you're riding a premium motorcycle. Will it be my forever bike? Probably not. Like I've kind of been aiming for a T120 or maybe a 1200 Scrambler since I basically got into motorcycling. So yeah, I've had maybe 6 motorcycles, and I've always been aiming for that 1200cc as my sweet spot. Do you really need it? Probably not, but it's one of those things in the back of my mind where I'm just kind of telling myself that I need to have it. So in conclusion, I've discovered after riding the Triumph T100 for 5,000 kilometers that it's a perfect bike for daily commuting, ease of maintenance. It's got those long service intervals. It's brilliant for going for long distance trips with your mates. You'd want to upgrade that suspension because it's not ideal, but it does feel like a premium bike everywhere, like all around. You get loads of compliments, whether you're pulling up in town or you're stopping at the traffic lights and other motorcycles pull up next to you, and they just, everyone loves the bike. I mean, it's beautiful, look at it. Get yourself one.